Hello and welcome once again to the Slate Breakdown. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Danny Carter at CD Carter 13. And we're talking about the slate, obviously, the Sunday slate. And we were talking a little bit before the show here about the Thursday night slate. And we both kind of had some pieces, but no Foster with DeAndre Hopkins. And you even mentioned you saw in some 50-50s that there were some people who had just Brian Hoyer in 50-50s, the backup at the time quarterback.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, what a play! I mean, you plug in a quarterback who is not starting and he scores 20. Way to go! I mean, that you should do it every week.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy that goes home to his home league and says, "Look at this! I'm a fantasy football guru. I knew that Ryan Mallett would get hurt and get taken out of the game."
It's unbelievable. I can't imagine.
Yeah, so hopefully, bad luck comes to those lineups on the Sunday game, and the good luck comes to people who actually pay attention. Hopefully. But starting off here at the top, 48-point total, Falcons against Washington. Falcons with a 28-point team total. Pretty decent-sized favorite here, and it's one of the highest projected totals, as you mentioned here. So obviously, this is another one of those Julio Jones decisions. Is it a pay up for Julio in cash games week, or is it a GPP week? What's your take there?
Well, I think the hesitation with Julio, as we saw last week, is that he's not going to get his in the way that we think of his production when the Falcons jump out to a big lead and keep that big lead. His fantasy splits when the Falcons win by more than a touchdown are a little scary. I will say I don't have them here. I can tweet them out later, but it's not exactly encouraging for people who are willing to pay up for him. Saying that, this matchup I think is tremendous on a few levels. One, the implied Vegas projection of 28 points for the Falcons. But Washington's secondary, which isn't that good to begin with, is down not one but two cornerbacks. So you have to imagine that the Falcons will exploit them through the air in some way. In fact, instead of paying up for Julio everywhere, I just have Matt Ryan as my cash game quarterback almost everywhere because he's a decent price. And I just don't envision the Falcons running into that Washington front seven, which is actually pretty good throughout the season. So I'm not going in on Julio, but I do have Matt Ryan, and I actually love Hankerson, not for the narrative street thing here because I know Hankerson is used to play in Washington, but he's seeing almost 7 targets a game, and like I said, this secondary is garbage right now. So I do have Hankerson in a lot of GPPs.
Yeah, I definitely like that call there. The other interesting thing here, of course, Devonta Freeman has been the DFS darling over the last 2 weeks. Highest score, I believe, on both weeks, depending on your site, but I think he was the highest score both weeks. Either way, though, Tevin Coleman probable now. He was the guy that they drafted to be, the workhorse in this offense, but what's your take here? Because I know you mentioned in the article it's a fade. I'm not going to have much Freeman outside of maybe a couple tournament lineups because I do think that Coleman's going to come back and get some workload. And you take anything away from Devonta Freeman, I just don't believe that all of a sudden he's this guy that's unstoppable. I mean, it's an opportunity if nothing else.
It's enormous opportunity. And last week on this show I said I'm fading Freeman, and he goes off. So, I really do think that this is a game that shapes up where the Falcons exploit the pass defense, not the run defense. Also, Coleman, like you said, Coleman's back, and Washington is only giving up 3.8 yards per carry this year. I just don't see Freeman. I still don't see Freeman as a guy who can transcend really bad matchups, and that's what it is here. So his price is too high for me on almost every site, so I'm off of him in cash games.
Yeah, that's a fair point there. And then you mentioned here Jordan Reed, of course, in concussion protocol. Deshaun Jackson, I mean, he seems like he's questionable every week for the last couple of years. Derek Carrier is a guy that you mentioned here as a sneaky play if Reed ends up sitting out with yet another injury.
Yeah, so I see Carrier. This might sound a little counterintuitive, but I'm actually using him mostly in cash games where I have him because I see him as just a punt play, an extremely cheap punt play. He's the minimum on DraftKings. I believe he's the minimum on FanDuel. It allows so much flexibility and cap relief at running back and wide receiver this week. And there are so many running backs and wide receivers with really nice matchups that you don't need Carrier to do a ton in this, and it shapes up for as a game in which Washington will be chasing the entire game. And Cousins checks down quite a bit. I don't have the stat right here, but he throws with 10 yards from the line of scrimmage quite a bit. One of the most leading quarterbacks in the league in that regard. So Carrier is super cheap, and I do have him in some cash.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense there. Next one, the Ravens against the Browns, or I guess the Browns against the Browns, technically. Here, 43-point total, and obviously you're going to be looking more on the Ravens side, but I think the interesting one here is Steve Smith, who we heard conflicting reports. I heard broken bones, then you heard broken ribs. Then they said, stop speculating. We're not going to tell you what it is. He's just hurt. He's doubtful right now, but I can't imagine anyone on earth playing after the injury that he had. So, I mean, it looks to me there's no way he's going to play. And a guy that you mentioned here is a guy that I have a little bit more than I'd like to admit of exposure to, and that's Kamar Aiken. Because, I mean, the guy's looked good. He's obviously got Joe Flacco's trust. He's had 5 catches in 2 of 3 games outside of the Steve Smith special against Cincinnati, where it was tunnel vision to Steve Smith that week. So, how much Kamar Aiken do you have, and do you see him as a cash game play?
That is, I'm torn on Aiken in cash games. Although he probably has a pretty safe floor as the de facto number 1 receiver now. I mean, that says something about Baltimore's receiving group. But if Steve Smith sits, Aiken is the number 1 guy, and I mean, would it be too much to project him for 8 targets? I don't think so. 10 targets? I don't think that's out of the question. So now that we've talked about it a little, I think that Aiken is actually a pretty solid cash game play. Again, especially this Cleveland secondary is nothing tremendous. It's really nothing special. So I like Aiken.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Hayden in particular, a guy that was one of the better corners in the league, throughout his career so far, but just hasn't looked good. I mean, no one on this defense has really looked very good this season. So the other guy for Baltimore, people are talking about, maybe not a ton, but we've seen Justin Forsett mentioned, had 150 yards last week, but the concern with him still is, he's going to get the between the 20s work, but how many goal line carries is he going to get? So I see him more on my end as a cash game play, just because I don't know that he has huge upside as far as touchdowns go. But what's your take there?
I mean, it's just hard to see that guy's price this week and see that he's averaging almost 20 touches a game and say, nah. So I do have a lot of Forsett across multiple sites. The Browns are giving up 4.8 yards per carry, which is, I think, second worst in the league. And 2 of Cleveland's 4 opponents this year have cracked that 150 mark on the ground. So even without a touchdown, I think Forsett can be really valuable this week.
All right, moving on next to the Packers and the Rams, and if you were in some of the Thursday contests and saw some of these ownership levels, I don't know that I've ever seen Aaron Rodgers this low. And I mean, it's not an ideal matchup, but I mean, depending on the contest, he was well below 10% just about everywhere. So, I mean, the Rams, obviously their strength is their front 7. Their secondary hasn't been particularly good. So, what's your take on Aaron Rodgers here? I mean, I wouldn't say you pay up for him in cash games. I think there's better options, but he certainly always has a high ceiling.
Yeah, he's so expensive right now. But I think his low ownership this week is just a direct result of him, burning people last week a little bit. I mean, he still put up 18 points, I think, on DraftKings. So it wasn't a disaster, but I guess the expectation was like 40 points or bust, against the Niners.
6 touchdowns or nothing.
Yeah, so it's it makes it a decent week to go in on him on GPPs maybe, where people are trying to save some money and go cheap. Maybe you plug him in. I mean, look at the Rams. Like you said, the Rams secondary is nothing special. Quarterbacks are completing 75.7% of their throws. I mean, that's tremendous, and Rodgers is incredibly efficient. So I don't see any reason to fade him.
Yeah, I mean, those are video game numbers. You should not have an NFL team allowing that kind of completion percentage.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's just all that Aaron Rodgers does, like you said. His efficiency is just second to none. So, on the opposite side of this one, obviously, a guy who had his breakout game, or I guess more of a breakout half last week, Todd Gurley. On the other side, Packers' run defense has not been good at all this season. Really, the one game that they looked decent was the Seattle game, but I think that was more of a product of Seattle not playing particularly well. So, how much Todd Gurley is too much, I guess, is the question.
It's hard, I'm hedging a little bit, but not much because he's still so cheap. And really, I think that this is the last week where you're going to get him cheap. After this, his price is really going to start to rise. Like you said, the Packers are very shaky against the run, and everything that you read from Rams beat reporters and everything you hear from Rams coaches says, last week was not a fluke. Like, we're not going to split carries. He's our guy. We want their offense to run through him. Look, it's Jeff Fisher. Okay, if Jeff Fisher could run 48 times a game, he would do it. Yeah. And so I think Gurley has that going for him, and I think his touchdown potential in this one is pretty decent. Hopefully, it doesn't get out of hand this game. Game script wise, but even if it does, I don't think that they'll completely go away with it. Last week they were feeding him the ball even when they were trailing, so I like him a lot.
Yeah, good point. He's a nice value, like you said. Take advantage of that while you can. Next one up, the Chiefs and the Bears. And oddly enough, I mean, you rewind this a year, 2 years, 3 years, and we're talking about playing the Bears, and lots of the Bears probably. But although the Chiefs, though, the strange thing is their strength over the last couple of years has been their defense. Now all of a sudden their defense not getting pressure on the quarterback looks horrible in the secondary. I mean, one of the worst, if not the worst, in all of football recently. And then you get the offense that all of a sudden has weapons. I mean, you got Travis Kelce, Jamal Charles, and then Jeremy Maclin, who is really cheap everywhere, and is the guy I probably own more than any other player this week.
Yeah, I mean, Maclin is, I think he's top 3 or 4 in the league as far as receiving yards go. I think that shows that he's not he's more reliable, I think, than people are giving him credit for. So yeah, we talked about it before the show. Maclin is just jumps out at his price point this week. I think that he's pretty safe. I actually like lineups in which I have Jamal Charles and Jeremy Maclin. I think both can have really big days. I mean, Jamal's averaging 24.2 PPR points per game. That's enormous. I mean, he's getting a huge market share inside the red zone of Chiefs touches. So I love both of them.
Yeah, and like has been the case for much of the season, is the Chiefs have struggled to protect Alex Smith, and it's not a great Bears pass rush by any means, but I mean that just adds to the PPR value of a guy like Charles, because I mean we saw last week against Cincinnati. I mean it was tons of pressure on Smith, dump it off to Charles. Tons of pressure on Smith, throw it to Maclin. I mean it's all short passes. I mean we still aren't seeing them throw the ball down the field, but mostly because he hasn't had the opportunity with that offensive line. How about the Bears side? Martellus Bennett obviously was big last week. Jay Cutler looked fine in his return. Yeah. Alshon Jeffrey, obviously, it does nothing official, but I don't imagine he's going to play here. So, are you playing any of these guys outside of Bennett at all?
I was really quite invested in Chicago's passing game because of the deficiencies in Kansas City's secondary. But without Alshon and without Eddie Royal, who looks very questionable, if not doubtful, for tomorrow, I'm off of everybody pretty much. I would say the one guy that I have in GPPs is Marcus Wilson, because just by default, I mean he's going to run a ton of routes tomorrow. He's going to be in the starting lineup if Royal and Alshon are out. And he did a little bit with his opportunity last week. So. This game projects the Bears to, face a horrible game script. So, maybe Wilson sees a bunch of targets with both of those receivers out. That's the one guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you mentioned here in the article, just barely a 17-point team total in Vegas. So you certainly don't want to invest too heavily in this. Next up, a big total, 49.5, the Eagles and the Saints. This one's expected to be a fairly close game. Eagles are favored here, but it's still the Eagles, which huge hype coming into the season, let everyone down in week 1 and week 2 and seemingly every single week. And then even Sam Bradford last week, first half, looked awful again, and then got those 3 touchdown passes in the second half. So I'm not big on Sam Bradford this week, but I feel like I should be looking at him more. But then when I do, I feel like I want to look away.
Yeah, no, you feel like you want to vomit.
That too.
Yeah, I just with 4 or 5 quarterbacks in that price range that I like, I don't have much of Bradford at all. I certainly not in cash games of any kind for me. But the one guy from the Eagles that I am definitely going to have a lot of is Jordan Matthews, and that's mostly because of how horrible New Orleans secondary is, and it's really bad. Not only that, but Matthews I think runs 85% of his routes from the slot, and the slot coverage. New Orleans has the worst slot coverage of any team in the league per Pro Football Focus. So I see him having a type of game that we saw in the first 2 weeks against the Falcons and against the Cowboys. He doesn't. They don't use him to stretch the field at all, but he catches a lot of short over the middle passes and does something after the catch with it. So I do have Matthews, especially since his price has dropped significantly over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's a really good point there. On the opposite side, of course, the Saints, C.J. Spiller, the guy that, often injured, often a disappointment, but mostly due to his 80-yard touchdown where he kind of just ran free and scored in overtime, and Dallas just, acted like he didn't exist, it seemed. But Spiller, as you mentioned here, nice high upside GPP play, caught 8 passes last week. And, we've seen him be a PPR monster, and really the only thing that's ever slowed him down has been the fact that he gets injured a lot. And obviously you're not anticipating an injury in any single game ever. But Spiller is certainly a guy with probably not a great floor, but a really big ceiling.
Yeah, I mentioned in the article that teams are going after the Eagles through the air. Through 4 weeks, opponents are averaging 43 pass attempts against the Eagles. I don't really expect that to change a whole lot, which means when Drew Brees throws a lot of targets go to his running backs. It was pretty clear last week that as long as Spiller is upright and healthy, Ingram is going to lose out on those passing downs. So I don't have any of Ingram. Honestly, I don't think I have one Ingram share this week. But yeah, like you said, Spiller in this one, if Brees throws 40 times, which is not out of the question at all, Spiller could see another 8 targets. In a game that's projected to be pretty high scoring, I like him.
Yeah, and especially because last week, we saw Drew Brees not really taking many shots down the field. Maybe his shoulder not 100%. Yeah. I don't know what that was. I think I don't know the exact number, but I thought I saw a stat that said Brees didn't throw the ball more than 27 yards down the field on any single play. So, not like they've been utilizing any deep threats anyway in New Orleans all season long. But like you mentioned, especially in that short passing game with those running backs, you're going to see more targets for them than anybody else. So
yeah, that's a good stat, yeah.
Next one up is an ugly one. You almost kind of want to just keep scrolling down and move on because there's not much to see here. Outside of a couple of GPP options, though, Tampa Bay and Jacksonville, only a 42-point total here. Neither team has been particularly good this season. And Doug Martin, though, finally had his kind of breakout performance last week. The Jaguars, though, it's interesting because you've got, Allen Robinson now is a guy that I've got in some GPPs. Mm-hmm. And, Doug Martin, like you mentioned here. But I think the interesting thing is, Vincent Jackson versus Mike Evans, if you're going to play one of these guys, because we saw Jackson have the huge game last week, but Evans with a much tougher matchup. So if you're going with one of those two guys, are you following in the Vincent Jackson path, or are you going to go back to Mike Evans?
I'm going Evans this week, partly because of matchup, partly because of the volume that he's seeing. I actually have Evans in some cash lineups because he's still, pretty far down there as far as price goes, and I see him as having a decent floor this week. Same with Robinson, actually. Robinson has been the victim of really horrible matchups, but it's important to remember that this Jacksonville passing game is pretty much dedicated to two guys, Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson.
Yep.
45-ish% of Blake Bortles' throws go to those two guys, which is amazing. So I like Robinson as Robinson and Evans as more than just GPP plugins.
Yeah, I like that call there. And then we'll go ahead and leave everyone else out of this game. It's not a pretty one. Next up, the Titans and the Bills. Another low total, just 41.5 points. And I know you had some shares of Ty God Taylor last week. I had him in a lot of cash games, and ended up being an okay performance relative to his price tag, but could have actually been a good performance. I mean, rushing touchdown callback, I think it was like a 30, 35-yarder. Had that long touchdown to Charles Clay called back on questionable call, in my opinion. But either way, I mean, this is still a guy you can look at, and it's just depressing to me, though, looking at this Bills running back situation in this matchup, because I'm not saying I would have played LaShawn McCoy, but I would have loved to play Carlos Williams against this defense.
No, this is one of the worst run defenses in the league. They're giving up 4.5 or almost 4.5 yards per carry. Dixon, I don't know, does he go by Anthony or Booby Dixon? No one knows.
I hear Booby, but I still haven't seen a video of him actually saying, "Call me Booby." So just saying.
This is a family show, so we'll call him Anthony.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I actually do have some Dixon exposure in cash games because he's at the minimum. He's slated to see a starter's workload. I know Dan Herron was signed. I think this was a few days ago by the Bills. That doesn't. I saw that as a reason cited for not going in on Dixon. I mean, they just need a warm body. I mean, they just needed a warm body who has played running back in the NFL before, so they signed Dan Herron. Yep. And I do have some Dixon just because the matchup is a nice one.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get away from this one. I've been torn on it all week. It's just, I was kind of hoping that Carlos Williams would pass his concussion protocol. It didn't really ever look like he was, but like you said, you definitely want to get yourself a piece of this. And I'm on your side here, where I'm not really terribly concerned about anyone eating into Booby Dixon's workload there.
Yeah, and I do want to say about Marcus Mariota this week that I don't have him in cash games, but because we don't like to chase volume for quarterback volume in cash games, but it's hard to ignore the fact that quarterbacks are passing 48 times per game against the Bills, because no one is going to try to run against them, especially not a team like Tennessee that basically has no running game to speak of. So, Mariota is going to throw a lot in this one against a pretty shaky, pretty exploitable Buffalo secondary. Which is why I have Kendall Wright this week too in quite a few places.
Yeah, that's a great call. And then I think we need to mention before we move on, Charles Clay, a guy that saw a ton of targets last week, 26 over the last 3 weeks, I believe it is, and already had a big performance, had a touchdown called back as well in the fourth quarter, and especially if Sammy Watkins looked like he was still limited today. If Sammy Watkins doesn't play, got to throw somewhere, and Tyrod obviously has a lot of faith in Charles Clay. I mean, he sees a ton of targets, and I mean, red zone targets, and even deep throws down the field, in the middle of the field, we saw a couple times with him too. So, I mean, if you're not paying up for a guy that we'll talk about here in a couple minutes, then I like Charles Clay a lot.
Yeah, I do too. We saw last week he was tight end 3 without scoring a touchdown. And so that gives you some idea of his floor right now. Now, I don't know if that's going to extend throughout the season, but his floor right now is really very high. I think he's just an ideal cash game tight end if you're not going to pay up for that Patriots tight end, whatever his name is.
That one guy that we'll get to in 2 games. One more game of non-Gronkowski talk, and then we'll get to him. The Lions and the Cardinals here. This one is one that I don't have much exposure to outside of Palmer and Fitzgerald, because obviously, I mean, that duo, the ageless duo, it seems like, with these two guys. Both guys having great seasons so far. Lions secondary, I mean, Darius Slay in particular, I mean, I just feel bad for the guy. Like, if I'm him, I want to go and act like I'm in the World Cup, fake an injury, and just kind of sit on the side, because, I mean, he has just gotten crushed this season.
Every week,
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, you just see terrible blown coverages, and everyone is just cutting to a jersey. You just see Slay on the back, and he's just standing there, just making a bad mistake. It's
Yeah,
not pretty.
or he's like running up to the safety with his arms spread, like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, running into his own man, like setting the pick. I mean, it has not been pretty in that Detroit secondary.
Just real quick on Palmer. I looked up his game splits as a Cardinal when the Cardinals are favored, and it's a huge difference. He averages 22.5 fantasy points when Arizona is favored, which is 5.6 points more than when they are underdogs. So I thought that was significant here, as the Cardinals are favored by 3 points.
Yeah.
To beat the Lions. So yeah, I mean, Palmer and Ryan are just like locked in. Forget about it. Cash game quarterbacks this week. If you don't want to go to the high end guys, the Brady's, the Rodgers, and then Fitzgerald has a really nice matchup. And I say it every week on the show. John Brown, John Brown, just throw him in a GPP. Just do it once, and I think that against Darius Slay's secondary, I think that he's a decent bet to catch a long one this week. Palmer's thrown 22 passes over 20 yards this season, which ranks third in the league.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm with you there. I'll die trying to get that big John Brown performance. So it's coming rather sooner rather than later, because I mean, it's not like he's not getting opportunity and not getting targeted down the field. It's just, I mean, everyone just wants to grab his jersey and pull him down before he can catch it. So, I mean, obviously it's a somewhat viable strategy, but at one point you're going to miss grabbing that jersey, and he's going to get free for a big one.
Here's the hoping.
Yeah. Cowboys and the Patriots, or I guess you could say Brandon Weeden versus Rob Gronkowski in this one. The Patriots, I mean, it's tough not to just go in every one of your lineups and just start clicking every Patriot at every position, because, I mean, it's tough this week. They've got a huge total, 29.25 points here. They're a marginal, or a decent size favorite, I should say, right around 9 points. And, Julian Edelman, 10 straight games with 10 targets. Rob Gronkowski, in case you didn't know, is by far the best, maybe the best offensive player in the league. I mean, he's incredible. And I want to pay for him, but I just don't know if I will in cash games. But then you got Deion Lewis, too. I mean, there's just so many options here in this offense.
Yeah, it's like stacks on stacks on stacks. In fact, when you use the stack generator on Daily Fantasy Cafe, you'll just see Patriots everywhere. You want to stack a quarterback with a receiver, it's Brady and Edelman. You want to do obviously tight end quarterback. If you want to do the triple stack, it's those three main guys. Deion Lewis I think is a really high floor play. LeGarrette Blount, is a guy who just bleeds the clock for the Patriots, and I don't understand how this game will be close at all. I think that the Patriots will destroy the Cowboys, similar to how they dismantled Jacksonville a couple weeks ago. Blount is attractive in that way, because if they get a big lead, he will see the ball. He will see goal line touches. I'm not brave enough to put him in cash games, but I do have him in GPPs.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, it's hard not to, because this is the Cowboys in name only, really, right now, with all the injuries they've got. So, did hear that Des Bryant was able to practice a little bit this week. I can't imagine they let him play this week, but I mean, that would be really their only hope of keeping this one close. I mean, Vegas is being kind, because people will still bet on the Cowboys because they're the Cowboys in this one. But yeah. I'm with you. I just don't see any way this is even a 2-touchdown game.
Yeah, I mean the Patriots are 9-point road favorites. That's really something. But I don't think that's enough. I don't think 15 is enough. I think that this will just get ugly pretty quickly. I mentioned in the article that Joseph Randle has some renewed appeal now that Lance Dunbar is out. Now, if Dunbar were healthy, I would be in on him big time in this game.
Oh, yeah.
But he's not. So so I guess Randle, from what I've read a little bit here and there, he is supposed to absorb some of that passing down action. They're going to pass a lot in this game. Maybe his price point is not fantastic, but it's he might be a tricky GPP option.
Yeah, and I mean, New England hasn't been great against the run anyway, and like you said, if he can take on a little bit more of a workload in the passing game, that's at least going to raise his floor, if nothing else. Next up, Raiders and Broncos. Broncos about a 5-point favorite in this one, 43.5-point total. And like you mentioned, you're surprised that Oakland has such a high team total. Obviously, they were kind of the flavor of the week there. The offense looked great, but in some really, easy cupcake type of matchups. But now facing a Broncos defense that, I think you're on the same page as me. I think they're the best defense in the league, and it's going to be really tough for this team to score points against the Broncos this week.
Vegas, with an implied total that says that Oakland's going to push for 20 points against Denver. No, I don't know. I don't see it. I don't see it at all. Denver. I think Denver was a bit of a letdown last week against the Vikings. I thought that they had, that they were a lock for 12 to 15-ish fantasy points. I think they ended up with 9 or 10, which is okay. But this game I am paying up for Denver's defense. I don't do that usually for road defenses, but they are so strong in the secondary. I don't believe in Derek Carr as a guy who can, transcend these sort of matchups. So I'll have the Broncos defense in a lot of cash games.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I'm with you. I'll go right back to the well in this one. I just don't see very many situations where this Denver defense is, a disappointment. So
yeah.
Next up, the Giants and the 49ers, and this one's going to be one that I feel like maybe goes a little bit overlooked because it's only a 43-point total, but the 49ers secondary, you and I both know, and most people know, is awful. And while they did play better last week, I'm not a believer that this is an improved secondary and improved unit. So, like you mentioned right at the beginning of your paragraph here, it says Eli Manning and Odell Beckham Jr., and that's kind of all you really need to know in this one because those are the guys I want to target in this game.
Yeah, I wrote that. I wouldn't argue with anybody who says that Eli and Beckham are, is the best stack of the week. The 49ers are allowing the second most pass yards per attempt, which is a really good indicator of opposing teams' efficiency against a defense. I really like that stack. I think that Eli's floor might be a little bit suppressed by the potential of a game flow debacle, which happens against the 49ers.
Yeah.
But I think that his ceiling is really, really tempting, which is why I don't, I'm going with Matt Ryan and Carson Palmer mostly in cash game, almost exclusively in cash games. I have Eli. I have plugged into GPPs just because of that. I think he has just a crazy high ceiling. Opposing passers are completing almost 70% of their throws against the Niners coverage unit. So it's all good for the Giants this week.
Yeah, and the Giants defense also because this is, as we know, they only scored 3 points last week. They scored 14 points for the defense or the opposing team before they even got a first down 2 weeks ago. So this might be the worst offense in all of football.
Yeah, and another thing for the Giants defense this week, Kaepernick has been sacked 17 times. We don't. That's not even close to how many times Russell Wilson has been sacked. But we don't. I don't think we traditionally think of really mobile quarterbacks as sack targets. But Kaepernick is being sacked and pressured tremendously. Pressured so much that sadly Torrey Smith is not even an option because those downfield routes can't develop when the quarterback is under pressure within 1 second of dropping back to pass.
Yeah, it's not a pretty situation there. Monday night, we're back to having a fun game on Monday night that we want to have exposure to. We started off the year with some big totals, and then kind of the last few have been kind of like last week was just ugly. It was a game that shouldn't have been as close as it was. Whatever. Obviously, no one really had much exposure to that game, and rightfully so. But this one is one that I'm going to have a bunch of exposure to. It's hard to say that Le'Veon Bell is not the top option. You could argue at any position this week. He's the guy that's going to be in every one of my cash game lineups, and it's instant. I start betting a lineup. You click Le'Veon Bell. Then you worry about the rest of the guys. So, and then on the San Diego side, you've got Stevie Johnson out. You got Malcolm Floyd not 100%. You got Antonio Gates returning. So, Gates and Allen may see a ton of volume in this one.
I have exposure to both those guys. I'm not I'm not fading Gates just because of the suspension or anything. I mean, he's been playing with Rivers for like 35 years. So, I think that they can pick up on the right foot. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a guy who was tight end 2 last year in Gates. But getting back to Bell for a second, the Chargers defense is giving up a league high 4.9 yards per carry. I mean, so unless this one gets just out of the hand completely, I think that he can have a really, really big game here. And even if it does get out of hand, it's kind of a so what situation because we saw Vic check down to him a bunch against Baltimore last week. So yeah, I'm totally with you on Bell.
Yeah, I mean, every time I watch Le'Veon Bell, I mean, I'm just in awe of how good he is. I mean, he's incredible. I mean, against the Ravens, who or at least a above average defense, you see him run into a pile. Looks like he's going to be gone. All of a sudden, little jump cut, and he's getting 15 yards. I mean, the guy can do everything. I mean, it's terrifying.
Yes, skinny Le'Veon is much better than rookie year Le'Veon, where he's kind of a little bulkier.
Yeah. The Michigan State Le'Veon was more of a bruiser, but I mean.
This guy,
it's phenomenal. He's unstoppable. So, all right, that's the final game of the week. That's going to wrap things up for this week. So, check out Denny, of course, on Twitter at CDCarter13. Find us at DF Cafe. And good luck this week, and we'll see you guys next week.